Usually when we talk about philosophy, especially ancient philosophy, it feels incredibly abstract.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like something you debate over coffee.
Right, just safely insulated from the messy, everyday realities of the world. But I want you to imagine a very specific, totally mundane scenario. You are in your kitchen, chopping vegetables,
Okay.
and your knife slips, and you slice your finger.
Ouch. Yeah.
The sensation is just sharp, immediate, and agonizing. I mean, the blood is undeniably real. The throbbing is undeniably real. And yet, the core of what we are looking at today claims that the you experiencing that intense pain simply does not exist.
It is the ultimate collision of high-level philosophical theory and raw, unavoidable biological reality. I mean, we aren't just talking about abstract ideas here.
No, we're really not.
We are talking about the fundamental architecture of human suffering.
So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are going through a stack of fascinating sources that sit right at this mind-bending intersection of ancient Buddhist philosophy and modern neuroscience.
Which is such a wild combination.
It really is. And the mission for this deep dive, for you listening right now, is to explore a really profound paradox. Basically, if the concept of you, or the self, is just an illusion, a biological mirage, then why does everything in life feel so real?
Especially the painful stuff.
Exactly. The daily stress, the heavy burdens we carry, why does it all feel so incredibly overwhelmingly real?
And we aren't just going to look at what these ancient texts say or, what the brain scans show. We're going to dig into the mechanics of how this works.
And why it actually matters.
Right. Why this knowledge is so insanely practical for you. Because in an era where you are constantly bombarded with stress, information overload, relentless pressure to understanding the machinery behind your own ego is arguably the greatest tool you can have for your mental well-being.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because for anyone trying to navigate their daily life, being told they don't exist while they're, paying a mortgage, managing a team at work, or dealing with a debilitating migraine,
It's a tough sell.
it's deeply counterintuitive. So to understand this illusion of the self, we actually have to start with the most undeniable proof of reality we possess, which is physical pain.
Yeah. And to explain the mechanics of this, the sources bring up this brilliant foundational concept known as the two arrows.
The two arrows, right?
So the idea is that whenever you experience pain or hardship, you are essentially being struck by arrows. The first arrow is the raw physical sensation.
Just the biology.
Exactly. It is the nervous system reacting exactly as it evolved to do. If you get cut or if you fall ill, that first arrow strikes. It's just an evolutionary survival mechanism to pull your hand away from a hot stove.
Right, because the biology is just running its program, regardless of what we think about it.
Yeah.
The hardware is doing its job.
Precisely. As long as you inhabit a physical body, those nerve signals are going to fire. But the suffering, the real heavy stuff, begins with the second arrow.
Okay, and this one is different.
This arrow is entirely mental. This happens when the mind steps in, takes that raw physical data from the first arrow, and instantly weaves a self-centered narrative around it.
Ah, the story we tell ourselves.
Yes. It's the inner voice that says, I hurt, or why is this always happening to me, or this injury is going to ruin my entire month.
I do that all the time.
We all do. But the goal of true mindfulness practice isn't to somehow dodge that first arrow. I mean, you are human. You literally can't.
Right, you're going to feel the cut.
The goal is to feel the first arrow without unconsciously firing the second one at yourself. It's the realization that the pain exists, but the sufferer is an added construction.
Look, I hear what you're saying, but I have to push back a little here. Because if someone is lying in a hospital bed with chronic, agonizing pain, telling them the sufferer doesn't exist just sounds like, I don't know, glorified denial.
I get that. It can sound dismissive.
Yeah, how is this not just self-hypnosis to escape reality? Are you just supposed to repeat a mantra, pretend the body isn't yours?
It's a totally fair challenge, but the mechanism here is actually the exact opposite of escaping.
How so?
Well, if you try to suppress the pain or distract yourself or pretend it isn't happening, your brain actually devotes more resources to monitoring the threat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the suffering actually gets worse because the resistance creates mental friction. The practice these texts describe is 100% radical acceptance.
So you don't run away.
You don't. You step directly into the eye of the storm of the pain.
Meaning you stop fighting the narrative And just observe the hardware firing.
Exactly. You observe it merely as vibrating, constantly changing physical sensations. You strip away the autobiographical story and just watch the raw data of the nervous
And
system.
just let the current flow.
You don't fight the current. And we know this isn't just some clever philosophical trick because we actually have the objective science to back it up.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting.
What's fascinating here is that modern neuroscience has literally captured this exact phenomenon on fMRI brain scans.
So they can actually see the two arrows.
Basically, yeah. When researchers put high-level mindfulness practitioners into an fMRI machine and expose them to painful stimuli, their pain receptors, the somatosensory cortex, the parts registering that first arrow, they are fully lit up.
So they're definitely feeling it.
They are feeling the physical sensation completely, sometimes even more acutely than a non-meditator, because they are paying such close, unfiltered attention.
Okay, so they aren't numbing themselves out at all. The data is hitting the system.
The data is fully registering, but here is the massive breakthrough. The default mode network in their brains is completely quiet.
And remind us what that network does.
For context, the default mode network is the neurological system responsible for creating your sense of self. It's the autobiographical center. It's the part that daydreams, worries about the future, ruminates on the past.
The narrator.
Exactly, the narrator. In these practitioners, that network is practically turned off. The physical body and the narrative mind are proven to operate independently.
That is wild.
They feel the agonizing heat of the pain, but the neurological I that suffers from the pain is essentially powered down.
The brain's self-center can literally be isolated and shut down while the body is still feeling everything. That is just incredible. But that immediately begs a huge question for me.
What's that?
If the self can be turned off like a light switch, who is actually running the show?
Ah, the million-dollar question.
Right. I want to introduce an analogy here because I'm trying to visualize how this works practically. Let's think about a car.
Okay, let's explore that.
So I own a car. I drive it to work every day. Now, eventually, I know that car is going to age, the transmission will fail, the paint will rust, and I can't really control that inevitable decay.
It's just physical wear and tear.
Exactly. The car has its own physical reality, just like my biological body. But sitting in the glove box, I still have the registration papers. I am the driver turning the steering wheel.
Okay, I see where you're going.
So even if my body is just a physical vessel that gets sick and ages on its own timeline, doesn't the mind's ability to direct the body prove there is a true self hidden in there somewhere, like a permanent driver holding those registration papers?
It is a really intuitive analogy. I mean, it's exactly how we all experience the world on a daily basis. But we need to rigorously test the limits of this driver theory.
Okay, let's test it.
If you are the driver and this core self is what is steering the wheel, you should be able to command your own mind with 100% obedience.
Meaning, if I'm the boss, the employee should listen to me.
Exactly. But if you are the absolute driver, can you instantly order yourself not to be angry when a colleague insults your work? Like, can you just push a button in your brain and say, anger, deactivate immediately?
Well, no. I mean, I can maybe try to breathe through it or walk away, but the physiological flush of anger still flares up in my chest, whether I invite it or not.
Right. Or think about a more common scenario. Lying in bed at 2 a.m. trying to sleep.
The worst.
Can you order your brain to stop its wandering thoughts? Can you say, mind, shut down for 8 hours starting right now, and just have it obey completely?
Definitely not. Usually the harder I try to force myself to stop thinking, the more anxious I get, and the thoughts just race faster. It's maddening.
And that is the crucial realization. The entity you think of as the driver, that commanding voice in your head, it doesn't even have control over itself.
Wait, really? So the voice giving the orders?
That voice telling you to go to sleep is just another thought arising from physical conditions, stress hormones, exhaustion. It's not a separate driver hovering above it all. It's just more traffic on the road.
So what about the registration papers? I still walk around with this profound feeling that I own this body and this mind.
The sources refer to that feeling of ownership as a conventional truth. It is just a societal and psychological agreement.
Like a useful fiction.
Exactly. It's incredibly practical for human beings to agree that this is your body and this is my body, just like it's practical to agree that a piece of paper with a stamp on it means you own a Toyota.
Right, society needs those rules to function.
But the underlying ultimate truth is that nature never signed a deed handing over ownership of this biological machine to you.
It's like how modern physics tells us the carbon, the water, the very atoms inside our cells are just borrowed from the environment.
That is exactly the mechanism. The ancient texts talked about the body being composed of earth, water, wind, and fire. Today we call it carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and metabolic energy.
It's the same exact principle.
It is. You are renting these elements. And eventually, nature is going to repossess the vehicle. It will reclaim the water, the carbon, and the heat, and it won't ask for your registration papers when it does.
Wow. That is incredibly humbling. Nature just repossesses the atoms. But if we follow this logic, it creates a massive gap for me.
Where's the gap?
Well, if nature owns the car and the driver is just an illusion, just a series of biological reactions that can't even control themselves, then why do we care so much?
What do you mean?
I mean, we are fiercely attached to our careers, our opinions, our bank accounts, our relationships. If I'm not a permanent driver, where does all this deep, painful attachment come from?
This brings us to the absolute crux of the illusion. It reveals a fundamental flaw in how human beings order reality in our heads.
We're doing it wrong.
We naturally think in a very linear subject-first way. We think first, I exist independently, and then I look out at the world and attach to things. Like, I am here, I see a shiny new car, I desire the car.
Subject first, then the object, then the relationship between them. That makes sense.
Right. But in truth, the mechanics of the mind operate completely backwards.
Backwards.
The sources use a phenomenal metaphor to explain how this actually works. They call it the tornado.
Okay, I'm trying to picture how a weather event translates to human psychology.
Think about an empty, clear sky. In that sky, there is no tornado. There is no invisible thing hovering in the air just waiting to spin.
Right, it's just empty air.
But when the atmospheric conditions change, when hot, humid winds and cold, dry winds violently clash, those environmental conditions naturally create a spin.
So the clash in the environment creates the momentum. There's no core object there, just energy.
Exactly. And as that automatic physics-driven spin starts churning, it creates a vortex. That vortex acts like a massive vacuum, sucking up dirt, leaves, dust, and debris from the ground.
Okay, the spin gets dirty.
Yes, and as all that debris gets packed tightly together in the swirling wind, the vortex becomes dense. It becomes visible and destructive. And only then, when we see this massive swirling pillar of dirt and wind, do we point our finger at it and declare, that is a tornado.
Oh, wow. So the tornado isn't an entity that decides to pick up dust. The picking up of the dust is what creates the appearance of the tornado in the first place.
Precisely. And this is exactly the mechanism of the human self.
That is wild.
The process of attachment is just a natural, automatic biological and psychological system running on cause and effect. Your senses meet the world. That's the hot and cold winds clashing.
Right? You see something, you hear something.
Yeah, you experience a pleasant sensation and you crave more of it. You experience a painful sensation and you develop an aversion to it. That craving and aversion create a spin.
And what's the dust and debris getting sucked into our personal spin?
The debris is your memories, your cultural conditioning, your habits, and your preferences. As that spin gathers up all those fragmented experiences, it becomes a dense, visible, repeating pattern of behavior.
The ego.
Yes. The feeling of an I, of a permanent self, is just a summarized concept, a convenient label that our brain projects onto that spinning vortex after the fact.
That completely flips the script. The act of attaching creates the self. The self doesn't create the attachment.
Exactly.
But I mean, if I'm just a spinning vortex of habits, that feels like a massive get-out-of-jail-free card.
Ah, the morality question.
Yeah. If there's no permanent driver making choices, why shouldn't I just act horribly? Who is there to be held accountable?
This raises such an important question, and it's the natural moral pushback to this entire philosophy. If we are just weather patterns of biology and conditioning, what happens to ethics?
Right. If my intentions are just biological algorithms and past traumas running on autopilot, how can karma be a real thing? Why should you or I care about being good people if we are essentially just a driverless car careening down the highway?
To understand accountability without a permanent self, we have to fundamentally redefine how we view karma.
How so?
Well, in Western culture, we often incorrectly view karma as a cosmic judge sitting on a cloud dispensing justice, or some kind of universal legal system keeping a scorecard.
Right, like I did something bad, so the universe will punish me.
It isn't that at all. The sources clarify that karma is simply spiritual physics. Action equals reaction.
So we're talking about mechanics again, like dropping a heavy rock into a small pond. You are going to get chaotic ripples regardless of whether you dropped it intentionally or it just slipped from your hand.
That's a great way to look at it. And it directly ties into modern neuroplasticity. The mechanism of spiritual physics is literally wired into your brain.
Like, biologically.
Yes. There's a principle in neuroscience called Hebb's law. It states, neurons that fire together wire together.
Okay, I've heard of that.
Every time you indulge in a furious, angry reaction, you aren't just having a bad moment, you are physically strengthening the neural pathway for anger.
You're feeding the spin.
You are adding wind speed to your tornado, ensuring that the next time you face a minor annoyance, the spin of anger will be faster, stronger, and harder to escape.
Wow. So what does this all mean for us practically?
Let's return to your self-driving car analogy. Imagine an automated vehicle whose sensors miscalculate a turn. There is absolutely no permanent driver inside.
Just code and machinery.
But if that self-driving car hits a concrete wall at 60 miles an hour, the kinetic energy still has to go somewhere. The physical crash is entirely real. The destruction of the chassis is real.
The physics of the crash do not care one bit if there's a driver in the front seat or not. The impact still happens.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it means that as long as you are trapped inside this psychological vehicle, as long as you haven't woken up from the illusion of the self, you will experience the absolute results of the physics.
Action and reaction.
You will experience profound happiness from positive, generous actions, and you will experience devastating sadness from selfish, negative ones. You will take 100% of the impact of the crash. It is exactly like the mechanics of a nightmare.
A nightmare. Wait, because the fear feels real even if the threat isn't.
Think about the physiological response. When you are deep in a nightmare, the monster chasing you does not exist. Your physical legs aren't actually running.
Right, you're just lying in bed.
But your amygdala is firing. Your heart rate spikes to 130 beats per minute. You sweat, your cortisol levels surge. The terror you feel is entirely physically real to you in that moment.
Even though it's an illusion.
You suffer the full biological impact of the dream until you manage to wake up.
So the goal is to wake up before the car gets the wall.
Exactly.
But, and this brings us to a massive point of friction. I know there are listeners right now feeling a bubbling frustration.
Oh, absolutely.
Because realizing you are trapped in a nightmare crash inside a driverless car makes you want to wake up immediately. But anyone who has actually tried practicing mindfulness or tried to systematically let go of your ego knows that this path of unlearning the self feels incredibly, agonizingly slow.
It is deeply frustrating. It goes against every instinct we have ever developed.
It can feel like a complete waste of time. You sit down, you try to detach, you try to observe your thoughts without judgment, and then literally 5 seconds later, you are agonizing over an embarrassing email you sent 3 years ago, or fuming about a comment your boss made.
It happens to everyone.
We try to let go of the steering wheel, but we don't seem to make any dramatic leaps forward. Why is it so hard to break the spin if we logically know it's an illusion?
That frustration is universal among practitioners. The reason it feels so slow is because of the sheer scale of what you are attempting. You aren't just trying to learn a new hobby like playing the guitar.
It's much deeper than that.
You are trying to fundamentally reformat an operating system that has been continuously overwriting and reinforcing itself for your entire lifetime. You are trying to reverse decades of biological and psychological momentum.
You're basically trying to rewrite the foundational code while the computer's still running high-stress programs.
Exactly. To explain the mechanics of how this progress actually unfolds, the ancient texts share a profound analogy from the Buddha regarding a master carpenter's axe handle.
Oh, I'm intrigued. How does a carpenter's tool relate to neuroplasticity?
Picture a master carpenter in ancient times who holds his heavy wooden axe every single day to do his work. As he grips the handle, his hands sweat, his calluses rub against the grain, and he swings the tool with force.
Okay, standard physical labor.
Now, at the end of a single long day of work, can he visually see the microscopic fractions of a millimeter of wood that his grip wore away?
No, absolutely not. Visually, the axe handle would look exactly the same at 5 p.m. as it did at 8 a.m.
Right, and after a week, it still looks identical. But over time, after months and years of consistent, unglamorous daily effort, that solid, unyielding wooden handle wears down perfectly.
It actually changes shape.
It actually molds to match the exact, unique grooves of the carpenter's fingerprints. The dense wood eventually yields to the gentle, persistent friction of the grip.
That is a brilliant image. The change is completely invisible in the moment, but it's undeniable and permanent over the long haul.
And that is exactly the mechanism of dismantling the illusion of the self. Think about being in a high-stakes boardroom and a colleague openly insults your project.
Immediate stress response.
The hot wind of anger instantly flares up in your chest. The tornado wants to spin. But if, in that exact moment, you catch the physiological heat rising...
Like you notice the first arrow.
Yes. If you just observe it as the first arrow, without immediately launching the second arrow of a retaliatory narrative, the axe handle of ignorance wears down a microscopic fraction of a millimeter.
So you don't have to achieve total enlightenment right there in the boardroom. You just have to catch the spin a fraction of a second faster than you did the last time.
Exactly. Progress on this path isn't measured in dramatic, cinematic leaps of realization where the heavens open up. It is measured in the mundane moments.
The tiny, everyday friction.
The instruction from these sources is incredibly practical.
Mm.
Keep your mind neutral, put in the consistent daily effort, and do not panic about the timeline. The tree of wisdom will grow according to its own biological reality.
You can't force it.
You don't need to frantically pull on the leaves to force it to grow faster. Just provide the right conditions, the sunlight of awareness and the water of patience, and the illusion will naturally begin to lose its grip.
That is an incredibly freeing concept for you as a listener. You do not have to carry the immense weight of the entire world on your shoulders today, because the you that is trying to carry it is just a temporary collection of habits, memories, and environmental conditions.
It's just a weather pattern.
Exactly. You don't have to force yourself to be perfect or figure it all out by tomorrow. You just have to practice stepping into the quiet eye of the storm. Let the first arrow hit, but refuse to pick up the second one. Just let the axe handle wear down at its own steady pace.
It is a profound, life-altering shift in perspective. But it leaves us with one final, lingering question to mull over as we wrap up.
Okay, what is it?
We've established the mechanics here. The self is exactly like that tornado and illusion created by the mind's attachment, gathering dust and debris through the clash of craving and aversion.
Right.
But if you spend your life successfully wearing down the axe handle, if you finally manage to stop the clash of those hot and cold winds, what happens to the incredible accumulated energy of that spin when the wind finally dies down?
Oh.
When the illusion of the self completely evaporates, where does the momentum of a lifetime go?
Man, that is a heavy, beautiful thought. Just picturing that energy releasing back into an empty sky. That is a question that will definitely stay with me long after we sign off today. I hope it gives you something profound to chew on as well. The next time you find yourself bumping your knee or dealing with a stressful email, just remember the mechanics. The pain is real, the stress is real, but the sufferer is just a story you don't have to keep telling. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you find some peace in wearing down that axe handle today.